Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome you all for the second time in the series of online webinars on Learn from Industry Intellects. So, today's webinar will be a great opportunity for you to discover the breadth of career paths in hospitality industry and how to upgrade your skills that match with your future career prospects. So, I would like to welcome you all for our series of webinars and the second webinar on the career spotlight in hospitality industry. Okay, so with that, so today we are going to put the spotlight on another industry intellect. He is Mr. Tyrone David. So Mr. Tyrone David is the former resident manager of the Grand Hotel Nuwara Eliya, and now actually for last March he has shifted and left the Grand Hotel Nuwara Eliya, and now he is currently working his own consultancy and training project. And at the same time, he is the president of Nuwara Eliya Hoteliers Association, and as well as he is continuously providing his knowledge sharing contribution for many of the state universities and the hotel schools. So in that sense, we also proud to have him. We also proud to have such a great personality to be the visiting lecturer for our university student. So with that, I would like to ask Mr. Tyrone. Mr. Tyrone, you can say hi to your audience.
Hi, good evening to everyone. Nice to have such a nice audience, young and intellectual audience. So always look forward to this. Thank you for the opportunity uh, to the faculty.
Yes, so we are honored to have you on board. So with that, there are some ground rules that I want to tell for all the participants. So we have muted all the attendees just to avoid some unnecessary background noises from your end. And at the same time, if you are having any questions while the discussion is going on, you can put all your questions into the chat box. So we will take all your questions into discussion in the latter part of our session. So this session goes around for 2 hours time. With the last 30 minutes will goes for questions and answer session. So, and at the same time, we are not permitting your personal recording. Our full recorded video will be there on our official YouTube page, The Tourism in Paradise. So you can get them downloaded later on if you have any further interest. So if you have not still subscribed to our official YouTube page, so you can subscribe, and at the same time you can click on the bell icon to get all the notifications of our future uploading. So with that, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Tyrone. Mr. Tyrone, you can continue from your discussion.
Okay, thank you. Uh, yes, can I have the slide?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this evening we will spend our time basically in three segments. Um, as the topic is career spotlight in the hospitality industry, and the brief given to me is to give you an insight into what the industry is really from the outside. I'm sure you would have gone through in your course of study about the introduction about the industry, the different components and all of that. But however, being in the industry is a different experience, as you would know. So I'm here to give you some insights on from the inside of the industry. And the three segments we are going to look at is some perceptions, some mindsets, some thoughts or ideas that people may have, society may have about the industry. And as you as young students may have some ideas which are not exactly the reality in the industry. So I will try to bridge that knowledge gap during my presentation. Then I will talk about certain skills that are needed to be working in the tourism organization. And lastly, I will look at the prospects in the industry. That is to help you to get an idea of where exactly you can fit in yourself as a professional. So that is basically the format we will run today. So first and foremost, I think if I were to ask you what your ideas about the industry or the perceptions, the first real question in all our minds is what's happening to tourism now, right? So let's deal with that. Let's get that out of our minds. Right now, as you know, um, with this COVID-19 pandemic, tourism is really on a low, but it is a very uh, what can I say, a very uh, a short period that we'll have this. It's a it's a it's a it's not a permanent thing. It's we are at the moment we are experiencing a short, I mean, really a bad time where incomes are not there. But what I'm trying to say is that we will recover from this, right? There is a recovery strategy already in place. A lot of people are put their brains together to come out with this, and everybody in the industry right now is working in the framework of the larger tourism recovery strategy. But each hotels, whether it's small, medium, or large, have started thinking and acting on their own strategies for recovery. So tourism has been one of the industries which is first affected by uh, any external calamity. So we have been through tsunamis, we have been through war, we have been through bomb blasts, we have been through endemics like dengue, and if you look at all of those instances, we have come out on top. So while being a sensitive industry, it is also a resilient industry. Um, so we are hopeful. The industry is hopeful that during the next 5 to 6 months that we will be back online. Now, having said that, we must also remember that the landscape, the tourism landscape is going to be different. It's not only tourism, the entire economic activity landscape is going to be different. So during the last maybe 1.5 to 2 months, a lot of thinking has gone into this, and you would have read some of the articles, some of the programs that have highlighted what needs to be done in the short term, in the medium term, and the long term. So let me just guide you to some of the literature that is available uh, at this point of time. But the main message I want to give you now is this is a temporary setback. That's how we are looking at it. It is a setback, but it is a temporary setback we are in. We will definitely come out of this. It is also widely known that Sri Lanka as a destination cannot be put down. Even if somebody wants to put down tourism, press it or to sort of curtail it, our tourism value is so strong that we will somehow sprout out. This has been the uh, this has been the scenario since 1965 or 70 when tourism started. If you look at from that time to today, we have had lots of setbacks in terms of civil riots, war, and like I said, so many other calamities. But the recovery has been fairly fast, right? So which is why we are now fixing a timeline of 5 to 6 months to be fully recovered. Now, going into some of the very concrete things that we have done during the last 2 months, the industry intellectuals, the academic, the medical fraternity, I mean, with the guidance of all that, certain guidelines have been laid out by the Ministry of Tourism and Aviation and the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Board, which I think is available to you. You would have already had a look at it. It's a fairly fairly detailed document, um, which sort of gives out the the guidelines that um, have to be have to be sort of undertaken by the tourism stakeholders. So it's called the operation guidelines laid out by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Board. I think this will be made available to you by the faculty. It's online. Now this covers the entire tourism experience from the time of making the booking to the time of coming into the enter in the country, then the transport to the different resorts, to the attractions, the management of these attractions, the hospitality uh, service providers, all of that. So yes, like I told at the outset, it's going to be a different landscape altogether. Just to give you sort of an example of it, uh, we will be operating our hotels, our business enterprises with a very strict protocol of health and safety. As you know, social distancing being the main, so the philosophy of it, uh, we have to, we had to rethink how we are going to do what we do in the hotels. In the hotels, for example, how do we greet people? How do we conduct them to their rooms? How we interact with them at the points of sales, like the restaurants, the bars, and the other areas. So all these have been uh, very specifically mentioned in the guidelines that I mentioned, and we are hopeful when the time is right, when the green light is given by the authorities, that we will go into operation. Now, this guideline, like I said before, is very specific. It covers the entire tourism experience and also the employee experience, uh, guarding the health and safety of both the employees and the customers, the guests. For example, the time of entry to the country, there is the laid out protocol is uh, a, a test has to be done, COVID-19, which is called the PRC. Yeah. Um, uh, Test has to be done 14 days before entering uh, the airport, right? So like that, I will just go through some of them. So it starts from pre-entry, right? What you need to do your booking. Your booking has to be done to hotels which are screened and approved as COVID-19 free destinations, or they are hotels. Um, uh, yes, and entry into the airport, the PCR test or rapid test has to be done 14 days before entering the country. So that's the first thing that is required. And from then on, the guideline goes down to say how each segment of the tourism experience is handled. For example, transportation, the drivers, the guides, the distance they need to be away from each other, and all of that. So, so that's those operation guidelines are, they look a little bit difficult for us, but I think we have to go by them because this will help us to make Sri Lanka a relatively safe destination. So that is the key uh, objective of this whole thing. Already, we are one of the leading countries in terms of managing the pandemic. Uh, with relation to other countries, we are done great in that. So now our next objective is to make Sri Lanka a safe destination. So these operation guidelines, although they are pretty stringent, uh, I think the industry has more or less accepted what is said there and is doing the training already. The hotels are already training their staff with the new protocols, with the new processes that are needed. Um, uh, right now, the situation is we are hoping during the next 1 or 2 weeks that the hotels will be open for the domestic tourism, for domestic tourists, and the restaurants to be operational with the new uh, guidelines. That will be a start, and then as we go on uh, with the improvement of the situation, the pandemic situation in the source countries, source markets, that we will have tourists trickling in as the months go by. However, we have to be realistic. Uh, we are hoping that by November, December, we will be at a strong point in terms of tourism arrivals. So this is, I think, one of the things that we need to uh, think of in terms of perceptions. Um, Now, many industry leaders have been coming out with uh, ideas, and I must say all those ideas are well sort of very practical ideas. One is to look at opportunities. What opportunities we have in this new scenario? Like I mentioned before, one is to be a relatively safe destination, right? I think we have a very good opportunity of achieving that. Basically uh, by sort of going according to the guidelines that I mentioned. Now, there was another industry leader who said that, well, China is at the center of the pandemic, or said at the beginning of the COVID-19 story, but it could be also our greatest uh, uh, savior, in the sense, if you look at the Chinese outbound tourist market, or the Chinese outbound tourists, in the year 2018, there were 150 million people going out of China as tourists. Only 265 or 265,000 or 266,000 came to Sri Lanka, right? So it's less than 0.1%. So if we do achieve, and which I think we will achieve, of being a relatively safe destination, the Chinese market could be one of the markets that we will attract. The good thing is China itself, with their big numbers, have uh, somehow managed to bring certain amount of control in the pandemic, and in the months and months to come, I think they are thinking of PCR tests for all um, outbound tourists. So with that, it might be China may be one of the markets that will help Sri Lanka bounce back. So that's just an idea. Another fact that supports that is the countries like Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Philippines, and Cambodia are the biggest destinations for Chinese markets. But if you look at, with the uh, exception of probably Japan and Singapore, right, we are better in managing the pandemic than most of those countries. Another thing that will discourage Chinese from traveling to Europe is certain politicians, certain leaders in the West have sort of made certain remarks which are not very friendly to China in connection with the pandemic. So that might discourage some of the tourists from going into those destinations. And again, Sri Lanka is well placed to exploit that situation. So these are some of the ideas that are coming out in the media right now. I think it will be a good idea for you students also to monitor this, to see what this thinking is, because we need new ideas, we need innovation, we need creativity to come out of this. Right. Just go. Right. So, like I mentioned before, Sri Lanka is better in COVID management than all the above mentioned countries, than most countries, that we already know. And this is the main factor we are trying to convert into Sri Lanka being a safe destination by the tourism stakeholders also following suit and following the guidelines that have been set by the authorities. Yeah. Right. Now, apart from this, there are some traditional perceptions about the tourism and hospitality industry, which have been there for ages in Sri Lanka. Because one of my hopes is that all of you students who will be passing out as graduates in tourism and hospitality, for you all to join the industry, right? So there are certain perceptions that are not the reality, right? For example, this was the view in the 1970s and 80s, 90s when we came into the industry, that it's full of social ills, right? Well, as you know, it is not the case. When you say social ills, it's about drugs, about alcohol, it's about all types of unethical behavior and all that. But I think we have shown now what we practice now is sustainable tourism, right? And with the new pandemic, it will be safe and sustainable tourism, which will be the name of the game. So today, responsible tourism and sustainable tourism are key factors. It's part of the triple bottom line concept that most hotels practice. Um, yeah, just a minute. Right. Okay. So the other misconception is that it's not a sober industry. It's everybody is on a high sort of a thing, which is not the case. This is very much now a mainstream accepted, socially accepted industry. So it is not. It is. It is in fact a very sober and very decent industry as we know it. Can you have the next line? Yeah. Sorry, guys, I'm just having a problem with the translation. Okay, that's fine. Okay, Sadharwani, I think you are helping me. Fine. The third point is that it is believed erroneously that tourism has a negative impact on the environment, culture, and society. Like I mentioned in the first point, sustainable tourism is a major requirement now. Most hotels in the small, medium, and large sectors, all sectors, are looking at sustainability as a um, major part of it. So that argument is also out. In fact, most of our customers, the travel agents, tour operators, now look into the sustainable practices of the hotels before they actually sign contracts. And there are audits done. There are different certifications that are necessary before actually business is transacted. The hotels, the tourism stakeholders have to prove their sustainability initiatives. So that again, we are at a. I think Sri Lanka as a whole, the industry has sort of embraced this um, concept of sustainable and um, responsible tourism, and we are in a good wicket on that. So that is another myth that we need to get out of our minds. Of course, number 4 is not there anymore. I think it does not reflect in the marriage market. The time when we were young, it was always thought if a person, especially a gent, is in the hotel industry, that he is open to a lot of the vices of alcohol, smoking, drinking, all of that. But not anymore. It has evolved just like any other industry. But I'm just mentioning this because these were some of the perceptions that maybe our parents will carry, your parents will carry, maybe some relatives, some people outside the industry might think of this in a way. So we need to be sort of sensitive to this as we enter the industry. Not suitable for females, certainly not. uh, I think the female contribution is about 30 to 35%, and it's increasing in terms of numbers uh, in the industry. It is a safe and secure industry, secure for ladies to join. In fact, as of today, in many hotels, uh, the ladies get more treatment or more facilities than the males. One is by law, especially regarding to working in the evening shifts and the night shifts. Accommodation has to be provided to them if they work more than or if they work time past 8 p.m. They have to be given accommodation or transport. So these are some legal things that are in place which uh, make it very comfortable and safe for females to work in the industry. Not lucrative, definitely. Right now it's a different story, but tourism can be a very lucrative career. Um, One of the advantages of tourism is it is in demand all over the world. So if you if you feel that you are not paid enough or you're not earning enough here, there is always the opportunity of going overseas to supplement your income or to make a better earning of your career. So it is, in fact, a lucrative industry, and it is definitely enjoyable. Um, and the reason it is enjoyable is uh, tourism is made out of different components. The tourism industry itself, you have the travel industry, you have the transport sector, you have the guiding, you have the souvenir shops, and then you have the hospitality industry. It's a different, lots of components. So what is key is for uh, young professionals is to choose your area in this vast industry. Use the component where you have the passion for, right? And then you will be doing what you enjoy, and when you enjoy your work, you excel in what you do. So it's a matter of making the choices. At the end of the session, I will talk you through the different sections or different components and different areas where you can um, fit in. So that's right. Not healthy. Well, let me tell you, yeah, healthy. It can be not unhealthy if you don't look after yourself, but like any other industry, it has its own balance which has to be created. Um, yes, in the hotel industry, you are you have what can I say, access to food in the hotel industry, but you need to control that, and then with the correct amount of exercise and diet, that should not be a problem. So I just talked you through some of the basic misconceptions or wrong perceptions of uh, the industry. So is if you have any questions on this, you can also sort of a chat and either ask now or later. I think it's later. We have the last 30 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any question on this part, please forward your questions. We will do our best to answer that. So yes, my interest also with working with the universities is to encourage young graduates to come into the industry, because in the industry, the majority of the workforce are rankers, who people who join as trainees, as apprentices, and we move up, including myself. We move up with the um with each rank. But in my case, of course, it was a little bit different because I went to the hotel school. But the majority of uh, workers we have do not have access to any training. Uh, they come in as apprentices and then slowly make their way up, and they are very knowledgeable in their chosen path. But what we need in the industry is we need young uh, graduates, young academics, people with some academic background to come in, because there is a lot of innovation, a lot of new things that needs to be done. And for ladies and gentlemen such as you, who have a good start in tourism and hospitality, it really is something good for the industry. I can think of so many graduates from Sabaragamuwa, Rajarata, and other universities who have come in and made a huge difference to those organizations. So this is my interest in being connected to you, is to encourage you to join the industry. I know there's a percentage that joins the industry and another percentage that doesn't join the industry. So yeah, so if you have any questions regarding this, uh, please forward it to us and we will deal with it at the end. Going on to the next, certain skills that are needed uh, in working in an organization. I have made some very generic observations, but tourism, or if I talk about tourism and hospitality both, as you know, is made out of very diverse components. So when you are working in this industry, you will be working with many people with different disciplines, right? I think more than another service industry like banking or insurance, where everybody is on the same wavelength. It is not so in tourism. You'll be working with drivers, with guides, with shopkeepers, with all types of people. And if you take a hotel itself, you know the organization, how it is structured. You have people working in kitchen, in the restaurant, in housekeeping, in front office, in IT, in sales, in finance. So it's a very diverse um, set of people you'll be working with, and it requires, into my thinking, some special skills. Um, so that that I will just talk you through those. Right. I just have a okay. I think I had a question about this previous point about the marriage market. Um, see, this was the case in the 1980s and 90s, but even now, uh, when it comes to marriage, certain questions are asked. Now, I have my relations sometimes calling me and asking me, there is a prospective groom for my daughter, and he says he works in a restaurant as a captain, right, or a supervisor. And the question is that a stable job, right? So, because if you say he's working as a officer in a bank, everyone knows that. But if you say he's working as a cook, he's working as a floor supervisor, or he's working as a waiter, you know, there are questions about stability, about job security, and all of that. And like I mentioned, whether it's a sober uh, occupation, right? So in those cases, I have to give them a lecture on what the hotel industry is and what the types of disciplines we have inside, and all of that. So that is what I meant by in the marriage market. You will never see in the, I don't know whether it's still there, the Sunday papers used to have marriage proposals, and you know, if you see uh, a prospective bride or bridegroom working in the hotel industry, you will not see that, because that is uh, not one of the top attractive professions, right? So that's a perception, right? But in fact, this restaurant supervisor or the cook or the chef or who might be even earning more money than a bank officer. But there is a misconception regarding. Uh, so I hope that uh, that sort of answered your question. I just saw that question coming up. So moving forward, like I said, the industry is filled with people with diverse skills, knowledge levels, I would say even attitudes. Um, but when we are entering the industry, we should enter with an open mind, be very accommodating, because tourism is all about collaboration, right? If you look at what we sell, this is a frequent question I ask most of the participants in my programs. What is our product? What is our product? And many people will say it is accommodation, it is food, it is this and that, which is all correct. But at the end, what we sell is an experience, right? So to make this experience, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people making the experience. It's a gamut of people. You know, from the time a guest makes his first phone call or his first email to the hotel or to the travel agency, there is contact with people, right? So all these people, the travel agent, the guide, the driver, the security guard at the entrance of the hotel, right? The receptionist, the bellman, you know, the reception, the waiter, the cook, everyone, they are all contributing to make one product, right, for one guest, right? So it's like selling a dream, right? And there are many people involved in making this dream. which requires us to work with an open mind, with a mind of collaboration. So my message to you, young ladies and gentlemen entering the industry, is to develop your skills of working with others, working in collaboration. Right? There is a famous story which I relate to some of my colleagues in training sessions. Um, I'm just trying to get the slide to trans. Okay, so like I said, there's a small story which I often tell my trainees, and that's about the hare and the rabbit. I think all of you know the story about the rabbit and the. Yeah. Okay, so there you are. So you know what happened, right? Yeah, can I go down, please? Okay, yeah, that's fine. So, as you know, the hare and the rabbit decided to have a race, and the winner was the the tortoise, right? And we all know why that happened, because there was complacency on the side of the rabbit, and he thought he could win it, and he took things easy. So the race was won by the tortoise, and the story, as we know, ended there. And the point to remember from that is always slow and steady wins the race, right? When you first start doing something, right, concentrate, take things slow at your own pace, and make sure you get the vital things done, and you will win the race, right? Now, the story doesn't end there. Once the tortoise was triumphant in his race, he went home. The rabbit was not, he was very worried that night. And then the next day he told his friend, the tortoise, shall we do a run again? So the next day they had another race. And what do you think happened? Well, this time the rabbit had learned the lesson, and the rabbit just kept on doing what he knows best, and that is to run as fast as he can, run as consistently as he can. And then the second race was won by the rabbit, because he did not relax. He was fast and he was consistent. So the second skill to have is to know your strengths and to concentrate on your strengths and to be consistent, right? So yes, it's good to be slow and steady, but you can't be slow and steady every day. You need to develop your space, develop your um, effectiveness, and be fast and consistent. So as the story goes, now the tortoise and the rabbit are now good friends, right? So they met on the third day, and the tortoise was not too happy because he had lost the race the previous day. So he said, he told his friend, my dear friend tortoise, shall we have another race? And the tortoise said, yeah, of course. Sorry, the tortoise asked the rabbit, shall we have another race? And the rabbit said, of course. He was very confident. And then the tortoise said, okay, we will start here. And he showed a point where they were standing. And then we'll go 50 meters. And after the 50 meters, there'll be a stream or a river, right? And the finishing line will be 50 meters on the other side. From the river itself is 50 meters. So it'll be 100 meters, 50 meters of ground and 50 meters of water. So they started the race again, and the rabbit speeded away to the end of the water, and then he couldn't cross the water. Whereas the tortoise came slowly up to the water, and then he got into the water and swam across and went to the finish line. So the third race was won by the tortoise because he worked on his strengths. Right? He was a little bit skillful also in setting the course, but he knew his strengths. He knew on ground he will be slow, the rabbit will be faster, but on water, the rabbit could do nothing, whereas the tortoise could go. So he worked on his strengths, and that's how he won the third race. So by now, the tortoise and the rabbit were very good friends, and they started talking about their experiences, just like we are doing now. And then they thought, okay, right, we have this race course, which is 50 meters ground and 50 meters water. And okay, the tortoise won it in 5 minutes. Now, can we do it in 3 minutes? Right, let's see whether we can fight against the 5-minute record. Right, and then they started to compete with the situation. Now, the situation was what? They had to get from the starting point to the finish point within 5 minutes or less, right? So they thought of their individual strengths. They were two different animals, but they had their strengths and weaknesses. And what did they do? They started the race. At the start of the race, the tortoise got on top of the rabbit, and they darted to the end of the water or end of the ground. So that was done very quickly, within 1 minute. Right, that was very done. Once they got to the water, the rabbit got into the water, and the tortoise got into the water, and the rabbit got on top of the tortoise, and they floated across. Spent the next 2 minutes floating across the water, and they finished the race in 3 minutes. Now, the moral of the story is that yes, at the start we will be fighting against each other. That's very natural, right? In time, we will work to our strengths, right? That is what we need to do. But as we go on, we need not to work with or to compete with each other, but to compete with the situation. Now, as you know, in the tourism industry, like right now, we have challenging situations. Right now is a challenging time, right? With the pandemic, we are now looking at how to work with the situation. We are not thinking of our neighbor hotel or what the other person is doing. We are all working together to fight the situation, right? So this is the same as individuals. When we join an organization, yes, we will try to be better than our peer or our colleague. That's very natural, right? But with time, we need to be as fast as the best person in our team, as fast as we can, fast and consistent. Then we need to work with our strengths, right? And very soon, we need to be a team player, right? We need to be a team player. So, like I said at the start, tourism and hospitality is all about collaboration, collaborating our strengths to win a situation, right? So these are some of the learning points that will, I'm sure, help all of us in the industry. When faced with failure, we need to work harder, right? Or change strategy, compete against the situation. Number 7 is actually what we should be doing. compete against the situation than compete against individuals or individual organizations. I just like to take through two corporate examples. If I just can go to the next slide, yeah. Right. Right. See, right. Coca-Cola and Pepsi, as you know, are traditional rivals, and there are many stories about how one got the better of the other. Now, in the 1980s, Coca-Cola was still leading the market, but Pepsi-Cola was eating into their market share in the US. So there was one Roberto Goizeta who came in as CEO of Coca-Cola, and his sales managers, marketing guys were always bringing up saying that Pepsi is eating into their profit share or their market share. Now, what Roberto decided, or Roberto told his top sales guys was, stop competing with Pepsi and start competing with water, tea, any other soft drinks, fresh fruit, any beverage that the American public was consuming. So he asked his sales managers, how many fluid ounces did the American average consume? And they said something like 14. Yeah, right. And he asked, what was the percentage Coke was getting out of that? It was a very small, maybe 1 or 2 fluid ounces. So he said, we are not competing with Pepsi, but we are competing with water, tea, coffee, anything that the American is consuming. So this was a change in the thinking pattern of the company, and this, what they did was they started putting in vending machines in all corners, right? And selling, the sales went up. Now, what I'm trying to say here is a businessman or an entrepreneur working against the situation, not against a competitor. So even in the industry, in the hotel industry or in the travel industry, there is a lot of fighting against each other. But the correct thing to do is to fight against the situation. So these are some of this, I think, will be important for you when you go into the industry. You will see there are many situations that hotels, organizations have to face when you're going forward, right? Can I ask my co-host to help me to go to the next slide? Oh yeah, and the next one, please. Yeah, right. This is another good. Yeah, Southwest Airlines is another good case study for all of you. Just do some reading on it. Now here is a company. Southwest Airlines is an American company in the domestic airline sector, which is hugely competitive. You know, the competition there is, you know, just hectic. So in the 1990s, when most airlines were going bankrupt, Southwest Airlines didn't. They were doing better than the others. And the reason is they were not competing against other American airlines. They were competing against taxis and bus travel, right? And that's how they made they were successful. So this is also true of the successful companies in tourism, right? There are some companies which will always look at their neighboring competitor. Some travel agent will always try to follow, try to do better in pricing, what we call undercutting at others. Some hotels will try to look at doing the same thing. How much is the neighbor selling at? We will sell at less. But if you look at the successful enterprises, they are always who looked at not getting the business of my neighbor, but getting new business, trying to be more, trying to compete against the situation. Right? So I'll leave you with that uh, thought. And Southwest Airlines is definitely a good case study. I will just go through quickly with the time available to us with some uh, traits we like to. Okay, so this is passion is a, I would say, something that is very essential in the tourism industry. Um, if you ask me what is the most, the one ingredient you must have, and that is passion, right? If you love what you do, you will do it well. Um, right, can I go down, please? Okay, right. You might be already knowing this, but this is also very true of the industry. When you go in as a professional, you need to have skills which can be practiced, which can be built up by yourself. You will need knowledge, and importantly, you will also have to have the correct attitudes. I will just go to the next slide and just um, elaborate it a little bit more. Now, technical skills and communication skills are some of the skills that are necessary uh, in hospitality. Uh, Technical skills, of course, you might be going into it a little bit now, but I must say most of the technical skills are gathered once you go into in service, when you actually go into the industry. I'm not sure about the amount of practical or technical training you all do. I'm sure you do a little bit of that, but even in the best hotel school in the world, not all technical skills can be taught there. I would still think about 75 to 80% of the technical skills needed is gathered at the industry itself, which is why um, you will find when you enter the industry that people who have come down from the ranks are technically very sound. They are very good at what they do by sheer practice. Um, so that's something that you gain in the industry. Communication skills, again, very important. Even if whether you are in the frontline operation or the back of the house, communication skills are very important. Um, English is like uh, the skill in English is important, as we all know. But foreign languages of the source markets like French, German, Chinese, Hindi, Arab languages are important. And not only languages, in communication, your writing skills, writing an email, writing, doing flyers, e-communication, all these skills. These are very general skills which everyone need to have. And I think the younger generation is much more apt to this. Um, Today, communication on social media is major in the hotel industry. It's a big part of our uh, communication with our markets, social skills uh, like etiquette are also very important. Leadership skills, right? You will be you will be in leadership roles in many occasions. It's not just becoming a manager or a leader, but even in other areas, in other situations, you will be called upon to um, display your leadership skills. And then, of course, relationship skills, right? Like I said, you'll be working with diverse personalities, people with different backgrounds, and for you to have good relationship skills is very, very important. Um, Going on to knowledge, again, this can be, you can get knowledge from many sources. Technical knowledge, right? Scientific knowledge, uh, knowledge of the environment. Uh, I guess in your studies, in your the time you spend at the university, you will be privy to a lot of knowledge, which, like I said earlier, uh, some of us who have come through the rank will not have, right? So that technical knowledge, that scientific knowledge about the industry uh, is going to be very useful for the enterprises you all join in, right? So I have seen this when graduates join the industry, um, they come in with a lot of knowledge, uh, which which can be harnessed by those enterprises uh, very effectively. Um, then knowledge of the environment. Now, as you know, the tourism product is such, or if you look at the hospitality product, we bring the customer to the product, right? So it's not like any other industry like the apparel industry where we make the shirt or the trouser and take it to the customer. Here we bring the customer to the product. So we need to have knowledge of the environment, right? Starting with knowledge of your country, right? Every tourism worker, every hospitality worker is expected to have knowledge about his immediate environment. His immediate environment can be um, his, his city, it can be the village, the city, the town, the region, the country, right? That is very important. And Sri Lanka has so much of diversity in our product that a lot of knowledge uh, has to be got, right? For example, uh, a waiter who is serving the morning cup of tea can be asked by a guest about a certain bird that just came to the window, right? Or a tourist may ask, what is that tree? What is that flower? Right? We are abundant with natural history or natural wonders that we need to be proficiently, or we need to be knowledgeable to explain those to the others, right? So right now in hotels, every worker is taken through an environment knowledge program, right? Because we see that as a essential part. For example, if you work in a certain hotel, what is the average rainfall? What is the altitude? What is the average temperature? Questions like that are answered by tourists. And today's tourists, as you know, are knowledge-based tourists. Right? People who travel not just to see, but also to learn about new places and so on. So that's very important. And like I said, during your time at the university, fill yourself with knowledge, because that is going to be very useful to the enterprises you all join in. Okay, going on to attitudes. Well, this is uh, uh, another area which some people say that cannot be trained. They say attitude cannot be trained. You can train skill and knowledge, but not attitude. Well, it's arguable. I think attitudes can be developed, attitudes can be shared by people, and I think we have enough resources for us to build our core attitudes. It's just that we need to listen to them. For all of us in Sri Lanka, uh, our parents, our teachers, our various religious leaders have told us about our attitudes. So we don't we don't have to look far for it, right? Core values, what is good and bad, how to operate in a group, things like integrity. They of course come with what we call the initial education we get from our parents and teachers. Of course, one attitude which I spoke about earlier was to be passionate about what you do. Whatever you do it with 100%. Give it your all, right? That's passionate. And the last point mentioned there is tenacious. To have tenacity. In Sinhala we say kadisarakama, right? Be very forceful in what you do, and to do it with a lot of energy, right? So to be a good professional, as we know, we have to have good skills, knowledge, and attitude. And let me reiterate again that you are at a stage where you uh, fool yourself or fill yourself with knowledge. So give that give that time, or make this a good time for you to fully fill yourself with knowledge, because when you go into the industry, there will be lots of colleagues, uh, team members who will tap into this knowledge, right? And then, like I said, skills, you will get certain skills you can develop yourself, like your social skills, leadership skills, communication skills, uh, but things like technical skills, to a certain extent you can do it in the university environment, but look forward to sharpening those skills when you get to the industry. Okay, so let's move forward. Yeah, I just like to talk about leadership. I'm not going to talk about too much about this, but leadership is something you will be called upon to do in any discipline, in any industry. Uh, but what I would like to um, stress more is leaders are nothing without followers. So there is something called followership, uh, which I would like to say. I'm not going to go into leadership, but if leaders need good followers, right? And in the tourism industry, uh, we need both good leaders and good followers. If you look at a hotel, there are many departments, many work groups, and each department might have 10, 20 people and one leader or two leaders. So if you take the workforce, about 80% of the workforce are not leaders in that sense, right? They will have personal leadership, but they also have to be followers. One of the areas we are looking at is how to be a good follower, right? And I will just take you through some point. Everybody is looking at how to be a good leader, but how many of us think of being good followers, right? So right? So leaders must have credibility, right? And credibility is given by followers. These are certain ideas I just thought I will bring into you, because everybody is looking at how to be a good leader, but it also important to be a good follower, right? We can't all um, look to be leaders as we join uh, any organization. We need to be good followers as well. Now, these are some of the um, what can I say? Some of the qualities of a good follower, right? Good judgment, right? This is also comes with personal leadership, to know when to sort of do what at the correct time, do the correct thing at the correct time. A good work ethic, right? Coming at the correct time, working within the framework of the structure, competence, right? Honesty, courage, discretion, loyalty, ego management. These are why I brought this slide, is to show you that it is equally important to be a good follower, like than or like being a good leader. Being a good leader is important, but in the same way, being a good follower is also important. This is the point I want to just bring to you at this point of time. Yes, can we move forward, please? Right. So here you see the qualities of a leader and qualities of a follower. Right. Uh, Quite interesting. Personally, I think a good leader will also be a good follower. Right. So don't worry about being a follower and not a leader as you join a new enterprise, because if you are a good follower, right, you will automatically become a good leader. Right. If you look at most of the things, they are interconnected. Right. Okay. Can we move forward, please? Let's move forward, please. Right. Right. This is another model which you can have a look about model of followership. It has two axes. On the left-hand side, we have the passive behavior. On the right, we have active behavior. And at the bottom line, we have a dependent and independent, right? So the ideal effect, the effective follower who is high on active behavior and is also high on independent critical thinking, right? So this is something you can refer to, followership style there, right? Right, can you move forward, please? I think we have a little bit time to go on to an important segment, right? Yeah, these are about some personality development. I just like to leave these points with you as we move forward. Um, yeah, empathy is another important characteristic which you need to have in the hospitality industry. Ability to understand and accept others. This will help you to deal with customers and team members equally, because we are working for people, with people, right? Our customer is closely interacting with us, and it is empathy is a quality that is greatly needed. Uh, the ability to understand, accept others, to put oneself in other person's shoes, right? In areas when you are handling complaints, when you're handling special requests, when guests need your help, uh, the empathy is very important. being tolerant and all of that. So yes, let's move forward. Right. I would just like to leave this with you all and come on to the last segment because this is very important. I think it's something you look forward to. We'll look at prospects in the industry, how how you can fit in once you finish your area of study. Right, you would have already gone through the various departments of the hotel industry. Yeah, can I wait for that slide, please? Yes, thank you. Right. Now, this is a hotel management company, but before that, if you look at a hotel itself, will have many departments. For example, front office, housekeeping, um, front office, housekeeping, food and beverage, and kitchen. Right. Those are the main departments, operational departments of the hotel. I'm sure you would have learned about it, so I am not going into detail in that. But that's very straightforward. If you want to be a front office manager, you specialize in front office accommodation management and sort of extend your career in that path. If you want to be housekeeping, again, you can specialize in housekeeping and accommodation operations and be a housekeeper. If you want to be a F&B, again, you start you join in as an F&B team player, as a waiter, supervisor, barman, bar supervisor, whatever, and move upwards. And same in front office, same in the kitchen. You join in as a cook and go up. So these four areas are very technical areas where it is always best to start at the bottom, right? Even if you are qualified from a hotel school or the best campus or the best hotel school, you need to start from the bottom in any of these operational areas, right? Operational areas like front office, housekeeping, food and beverage, and kitchen, right? So any other areas, right? We will look at some other areas which um, you can go to. So yeah, so if you look at this slide, you will see this is a hotel management company. Now, a lot of the hotels, I would say not a lot, a fair number of hotels in Sri Lanka are run by corporates, and this is the trend of the future. If you see, the international chains are coming in, Shangri-La, Hyatt, Sheraton, the Intercontinents, these hotel Marriotts are coming in. They are hotel management companies. There are also the Sri Lankan hotel management companies, right? Now, I think there is a lot of opportunity for undergraduates in the corporate sector, that is the hotel management companies, than in individually owned companies, because here these companies look for people with knowledge, people with an academic background, so that uh, uh, they can harness those skill sets, right, for their objectives. So I would think if you like to work in an individual hotel, fine. Right? If that is your passion, go for it. Right? If you want to be a chef, if you want to be a F&B manager, you want to be a wine specialist, you want to be a naturalist, no, fine. All that is, if that is your passion, that's it. But there are opportunities also in the corporate sector. Uh, for example, if you look at the different sections of a corporate, of a hotel management company, you have the sales and marketing department, you have the finance, you have the operations, you have the head of HR, the HR department, head of engineering. You might have other sections like CSR section, or you might have another, uh, sales, online sales, things like that. So anyway, um, if you look at the sales and marketing, there are a gamut of jobs there. There is a sales manager, contracting manager, brand manager, corporate sales manager, online sales. Right. Uh, then if you go on to the finance side, uh, you have accountants, internal auditors, group accountants, finance, is mostly finance oriented. It's most of them are qualified accountants or finance people. You go into operations, head of operations, uh, right? Okay, right, yeah, yeah. Just keep it there. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Head of operations, normally that's the real uh, the hotel manager itself, the assistant manager, the unit management, right? This head of operations, the unit managers report to head of operations. So um, the major point I'm trying to drive here is that nobody walks in as a manager, right? You need to focus on a certain area of specialization in the hotel industry, and from that you can go up to become a hotel manager. For example, like I told you before, if you are a if you if you if you specialize in housekeeping, you can become a departmental executive in the housekeeping, right? Become an assistant housekeeper or an executive housekeeper, then you become a departmental executive. Then you become a head of department, right? Like you see in this slide, you become a head of department, then you become an assistant manager of a hotel, and then you become a hotel manager, right? That's how that works, right? So from the operational areas, if you want to come into the corporate sector, it will be uh, in the hotel you become a hotel manager, and from there you can become head of operations or any other uh, parallel rank, right? Right, right, okay, right. Engineering, sorry, head of HR, again, corporates have their employee relations managers. CSR coordinators can be under HR, or it can be a different section altogether. As you see, those are also specialities. Uh, then, uh, yeah, the training managers and personnel managers all come under the head of HR. Uh, so, as undergraduates, if you come with your degree, and it is very much easier for you um, to enter one of these positions because you have your background is pretty good, right? Now, another uh, another thing that a lot of professionals do now is to have two qualifications. A person from uh, the university, a degree in tourism or hospitality, they might couple it with maybe a diploma in HR or in some part of it in engineering or in finance, right? Like SEMA or something like that. So if you have a combination like that, right, that is also important in the corporate sector, right? Today there are finance directors who are also lawyers, right? And you will see a lot of this in the corporate sector, where people have 2 or more qualifications, right? Because that sort of helps them. You might have a finance guy with a diploma in sales and marketing, or you might have a finance guy who has a diploma in HR, right? So to have 2 qualifications is helpful uh, in this scenario, right? So that's another piece of advice I can give you. While you get into the hotel industry at a certain level, try to sort of supplement your major area of focus with um, another specialty, right? So that specialty can be HR, finance, marketing, or even part of engineering. There are new areas opening up in engineering. Uh, like you see here, there are energy coordinators. There are companies that have engineers, qualified engineers, working as energy coordinators, right? If you take a hotel company which has, okay, 15 or 20 hotels, right, the energy is a big factor, right? It's something that can uh, be a major factor in the bottom line. So there are engineers stationed at head office to look at the energy component. So these are certain openings that are there in management companies. Mm. Another area which I have not mentioned here is the natural history. Right? Today there are naturalists in hotels, nature interpreters are also part of this. So there are new areas coming into this. Um, uh, right. So I think I have covered most of it. I would like to open for questions and answers now. Yes, Sadharwani.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Tyrone, for your insightful additions for this session. So next we are moving towards the Q&A session, but before that, I feel like it's better if you could share your success story of your career with the students. I think that might be quite inspiring for them, and they would love to hear your story of your success.
Okay, right. My success story. Okay, let me start. Well, my first, okay, before during my school time, my ambition was to be an agriculturist, right? But a very close number 2 was the hotel industry, right? Mainly because I had friends and relations working in the industry, and I knew about the industry. Now, this is important because I got into the industry because I knew about the industry and I liked what I saw. So, uh, so that was after my A levels, which I couldn't get into the campus in the stream I wanted to. So I joined the Ceylon Hotel School to do my first basic, and there are 4 basic level courses in the 4 operational areas. So I started with front office. I was in the hotel school for 4 months, and then for 6 months I was working in a hotel in Kandy. And after the 6 months, I went back to the hotel school, did another 4-month course in food and beverage, uh, and then those courses are called basic level courses. And then again, I went for 6 months to work in a hotel in Kandy again. So it has been half study, half work sort of a thing. It was quite good. And then in my third year, I did cookery as a basic level and did my industrial training overseas. That was in 1989 during the JVP troubles in Sri Lanka. I went overseas. I worked in Abu Dhabi for a oil refinery as a cook. So that was really good experience. I worked there for 2 years. and then came back and finished my fourth basic level course, which was housekeeping. So after doing housekeeping, I then did my intermediate and advanced level in food and beverage operations. That was my specialty, and got myself qualified. So it has been, up to that point, it has been half work, half study, which I think is a good combination. And then my first job was at Queen's Hotel Kandy as a restaurant manager. Again, very challenging because I was like 27 years old and my entire department was older than me, right? So that was very challenging to work there, but it taught me a lot of things. So I spent 3 years there, then moved on to Hotel Swiss Hotel, which is on the other side of the lake in Kandy. And then what happened? Right. So my career has been mostly in, at that time, up to that time, specializing in food and beverages. That is the area where I was reading a lot. I was doing my own studies on that, reading about wines, reading about beverages. And during that time, I found that while supervising staff, it was also beneficial for me to train staff. So I was doing training at that time while working as a restaurant manager. And then I gradually got into training. And I sort of liked training so much that I gave up the hotel, or I shifted from a hotel to a institute. I joined the Ceylon Hotel School as a, yeah, as a lecturer, right? So that time, yeah, the hotel school was in Kandy, and I was working as a lecturer at the hotel school, which is also the time I used to do some work with Rajarati University as a visiting lecturer. Um, I found that it was a very enjoyable job, but I also saw that I could train more if I had more experience in the industry. So after 3 years, I got into the industry again. I joined Jetwing Hotels as a training manager. Um, the Jetwing was a very progressive group, which was really um, on a expansion program. They were into Ayurveda hotels, and they were into natural history. They had naturalists, nature and ecotourism. They were into that, so that was very attractive for me. So I spent 10 years with them as training manager, then as quality assurance, and finally as head of HR. I was working for them, and then during that time, yeah, I wanted to get back into operations, right? I had enough time in the office, so I want to get back into operations. So then I got worked as general manager for a small hotel in Tangol called Tangol Bay Hotel, which is an extraordinarily architectural hotel with extraordinary architecture. That was a short time, that was 1.5 years. And then I joined Grand Hotel as a resident manager in 2012. Right. So Grand Hotel was again a very progressive organization, always doing new things, opening new F&B outlets, very strong in F&B, and also, as you know, a heritage hotel. So that's how my career has been there. I have always tried to balance operations and training, because I thought if you are in training for a long time, you lose touch of operation. And if you're in operation for a long time, you lose touch of training. So, but I always thought you'd be a better trainer if you had operational experience. So right now, I have made a shift from operations to training. And right now, I am spending more time in helping small hotels, small bungalows, small timers, a little work with some other corporates. But in the future, hoping to do more training and less time in operations. But having said that, you can't differentiate the two. Even when you're in training, you have to be operational focused. My time at Jetwing Hotels as a trainer, I used to spend a lot of time in operations as well. That was how we worked there, and that was very what can I say, fruitful. You will become a better trainer when you understand operations better. So, so my message to all of you young boys and girls, get into the hotel industry. It's a very enjoyable industry. You can find what you are good at there. It's so vast, so diverse, that if you are good at something, we all have talents. You will have a place for that talent in the hotel industry. Right. So there you are, Sandroni.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tyrone, for sharing your story, because your story might be a good learning point for our students. So thank you for sharing that. And next, with that, I will move towards the questions coming from our audience. The first question, actually, it's regarding the operational guidelines issued by the Ministry of Tourism and Aviation. It's
Yes.
basically asking about, I will read the question for you.
Yes.
So, do you think that those guidelines are bearable to small and medium scale hoteliers in the country? And what sort of hope do we have start tourism back when many of our source markets are still under danger?
Yes.
So,
To answer the first question,
yes,
yes. Now the guidelines given are very stringent, right? And when you look at it, it's like, oh, that's a lot of work for us. A small timer might look at it and say, I mean, wearing face masks, wearing gloves, having the social distancing, can we do it? So it's not a question of can we do it, but it's a question of we have to do it, right? Like in the past, these are hard times. We have to get, we have to do these things. But to answer your question, I have gone through most of the guidelines, and I think most of them are possible by the small, medium, and large enterprises. Uh, because remember that the tourists who are coming also are looking at this. They are also appreciating this, because they will appreciate us taking these precautions. It's like even today when you go into a bank, no, our hands are sanitized, right? We are asked to wear masks. We are asked to wash our uh, fingers and our hands and to maintain a 1 meter distance. So as customers, we appreciate that, right? We like to go to a bank which is strict on those, right? So in the same way, the customers will look at us. Okay, this particular hotel, although they are smart, um, although they are small, they are they are doing all these things for our safety, so they will appreciate that. So I think yes, this is quite possible for small players also to follow these guidelines. The second question about our source markets being badly hit, yes, that is a concern, that is a reality. If you look at Central Europe, those markets are badly hit. If you Germany, Italy, UK, those markets are badly hit. Um, but there will be a time of recovery sooner or later, right? We are hoping it will be sooner, within 3, 4, 5 months, right? But definitely during 6 months, there will be a turnaround. There will be people traveling again, and we will be able to uh, we will be able to welcome them again. So I hope that uh, that that answers your question. Remember,
yes,
India and China and Russia are also big markets for us, and those markets are doing slightly better than Central Europe. So that will be also an addition for us. Yes.
yes. Okay, thank you. And so next question is basically asking about the experience of the hotel to become the general manager. Uh, so it's the question is raised from Dhananjay Herat. He's asking whether it is required to have all department experience to become a general manager of a hotel.
Right. Dhananjay, I think you don't need all experience in all departments, but if you have uh, uh, a little bit experience in some of it. For example, what I'm saying is, like I said, you need to specialize in one department. Like let's say you specialized in front office, so you work as a front office receptionist, as a supervisor, front office manager, so on. Yes, you can be a general manager like that, but you will be a better general manager if you can get at least a little bit of experience of 1 or 2 months in the other departments, right? That is why the traditional hotel schools structure their courses so that experience is obtained in all departments, right? So in even in your career, if you can sort of speak to your employees and say, okay, I'm working in the front office now, but during my off time, can I work a little bit in the housekeeping? Can I work a little bit in the kitchen? There are some people who do that, right? That's one way of doing it. Uh, but to answer your question, yes, you will be a better general manager if you have experience in all the departments or in most of the departments. That is a fact, right? But how you are going to manage that in your career needs to be seen, right? If you are going to spend 6 months as a receptionist, 6 months as a waiter, 6 months as a cook, 6 months as a housekeeping person, yeah, that will be fantastic. But it's not all that easy to do that, and to also manage a career. So I hope I answered your question. Yes, theoretically, it is you will be a better general manager, right? To if you have experience in all departments, but practically, it's not easy. You need to have a career in one specialty to make that change every 3 years. When I say 3 years, normally if you are a room boy for 3 years, after 2 years you will be a supervisor, right? Another 3 years you will be maybe an executive, right? With your start from the university, maybe within 3 years you might be a executive, and then you can be a housekeeper and go so on. So in that scenario, how you are going to get experience in the other departments has to be seen, right? So one way is um, to work in other areas during your off time, right? We call it cross training, right? Where you can do cross training while you're working in the housekeeping, you work in the kitchen for a few hours. I hope that answered your question.
Okay. So with that, actually, this question actually coming from my side. Actually, most of the university students also are raising the same question from me in several cases.
Yes.
So actually, the students have a myth in their mind that the industry is prioritizing in recruiting the hotel school graduates rather than recruiting for the state university graduates. So what's your view on that?
My view on that is, I think that's a myth, because I'm during my time as a recruiter at Jetwing at one point for about 2 years time, my major job was recruiting people. And to be very honest, um, in the hotel industry, we look at more of the skill and knowledge of the person than what institute he came from, right? Um for example, we will sometimes not look at the certificate, right? But we will look at his prior experience for certain jobs. Where there is no prior experience, let's see, we are looking at graduates to join as management trainees, right? If you are looking at the category of management trainee, definitely preference is given to graduates in hotel tourism, right? uh, because how can I say this? I think um, graduates are more open to learning. They are more used to learning. They have a habit of sort of doing research and learning and developing new things. So for management trainee, for business development, for that type of role, definitely priority is given to graduates, right? The hotel school is totally a different thing. I don't think anyone is giving preference to hotel school. I'll be very honest with you, because the hotel school program itself does not want that. Now, I have been a lecturer at the hotel school, right? What we do is we don't give them a qualification, we give them skills, right? I hope that is clear. It's
Yes.
not a piece of paper, right? But someone will come and say at an interview, oh, I was the batch top at the hotel school, this is my certificate, right? I was the best at the intermediate level and advanced level. Well, a recruiter will not take that very seriously. He will ask certain questions. For example, if he has specialized in food and beverages, he will ask, okay, so how far have you learned in wines? Those are the type of questions we will ask, right? The hotel industry is not into certificates a lot, right? So hotel school or non-hotel school doesn't matter. But when you say graduate of an industry, that speaks a lot. Because like I told you at the start, we don't have many people with those capacities, those skill sets of learning, researching, and implementing. Right? We have rankers who, over the years, have their skill, technical skill to a certain level, and they keep on going. But we need innovation, we need research, we need R&D, research and development, right? And that can come from graduates of the hotel industry, of the tourism and hospitality industry. So that is why there is actually the industry is calling for more universities to offer tourism and hospitality. Yeah, so that's something that should happen in the future. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Uh, and with that, next one actually coming from the technological part. So, as the emerging technologies are coming and that has been involved into the hospitality industry as well, like
Yes.
robotics and artificial intelligence, all these things. So, the question is coming from Sangeet Amarasinghe. So, he is asking, is robotics or the technologies will be a threat to the hotel sector, especially targeting for the robotics?
Right, robotics and whatever you call it, automation, not automation, but yeah, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Um, Sangeet, traditionally in the industry, that has not been a threat, right? Even automation, right? We are now computerizing. Most hotels run property management systems, but that has not taken away the jobs of a good waiter, a good room boy, or a good cook. No, I think we can never imagine a robot making us good food. No, so that will never happen, right? Uh, right now, there is, with this pandemic, there is, I have seen on the media that there is some um, there are some inventions where food is taken to the room, sort of a thing,
Yes. Yes.
But generally, to answer your question, tourism has many threats, but robotics is not one of them. We are quite happy with robotics, building cars and doing other things. We know they will not get into our jobs very soon.
Yes. Okay. Um, so next, the Shanika Karuna Tilaki is asking about, so what would be the potential job opportunities in the industry with upcoming trends, especially for the entrepreneurs, those who would like to enter the industry as startups? What would be
Yeah,
the upcoming trends for them?
right. Now, as trends are, there is now a shift towards small luxury hotels or small hotels, what we call boutique operations. Now, these as entrepreneurs, the trend now is to go in for smaller, luxurious properties. We see even the bigger companies in Sri Lanka, like Jetwing, Cinnamon, uh, Dilma, right? All these companies going in for small, high-end luxury, right? So that is definitely one trend. Now this has been accelerated with the pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic. We think the tourists coming to Sri Lanka in 6 months' time will tend to stay away from large hotels and go into small hotels with limited contact with other guests, right? So that is another trend. So we see a lot of the entrepreneurs going in now for high end. When I say high end, we are talking about $300 plus or $250 plus per night, right? That price range, small hotels, small bungalows, small chalets, right? Where so that will be one of the trends. The other trend will be to have a very strong online presence, right? Online presence, as we all know, most of commerce is now done online. So the more attractive you are online, uh, that will be uh, that will be a big factor. And the third factor, of course, will be sustainability, right? People are always asking about your sustainability practices. What do you do with your waste? How do you manage your waste? Who are your staff? Are your employees from the area, right? What is the food you are serving? Is it eco-friendly, packaging, all that type of uh, sustainability issues there. So basically there are three areas that I mentioned. One is the size of the operation has to be small and luxurious. Number two is your online presence has to be very strong. And number three, your sustainability practices have to be very up to date, and very transparent. And if possible, the guest should be able to interact with your sustainability practices, right? Whether it's tree planting or active with the community, the guest can be sort of engaged in that. That would be a big advantage for you.
Okay, I think we have answered your question. Uh,
Yes.
yes, Himahansa Gaganaki is asking another question. So, which sector is the best of this industry, whether it's a travel agency or the hotel? Because he is asking this question because he mostly like to travel all over the world. So, in that
Okay.
sense, which industry, which sector is most, I mean, the best to travel abroad and work abroad?
Well, I would say the hotel industry, because the travel industry is very now in Sri Lanka. If you get into the travel industry, uh, you are working with the Sri Lankan setup. When you're working in a you're working as a travel executive, you are on behalf of the customer. You are working with the Sri Lankan stakeholders. So your language, your way of working, all is different. It will be difficult for you to go to another country and work in a travel executive because you need to study their culture, their language, all of that. So to answer your question, I would say the hotel industry is the better Because if you are a cook in a, say, specializing in pastry or continental cooking, you can get a job anywhere in the world, right? If you are a room attendant, right, or a room service person or a housekeeper, you can get a job anywhere in the world, right? So same as that in many of the hotel jobs, because the hotel job is the same whether you work in USA or UK or Australia or Sri Lanka, the job is the same. F&B manager's job is the F&B manager's job. So to answer your question very clearly, the hotel sector will be the better if you are thinking of working overseas, visiting other countries and traveling. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, definitely. So the next question is basically asking about uh, just after finishing the degree,
Yeah,
can we join as a management trainee in finance or marketing or HR department?
I think, well, I'm not sure about the other sectors, because the question is whether you can join as a management trainee in finance, HR, or in other sectors. But I can tell you for sure, hotel and travel industry, you will have a chance. So let me clarify the question again. So
Yes.
he wants to know whether he can
Ju-
join another industry, isn't it?
no, I think join the finance, marketing or HR departments in the hotel industry.
Ah, okay. Yes, yes, definitely. That's possible, because when we when we say management training in the hotel industry, let me be honest with you. uh, We don't have, how can I say, many of our management training programs are not successful because we don't get the correct people inside, right? In the industry, but and may I say, we don't get graduates in it, right? But if you get graduates into the management trainee program, our success rate is more, right? So let's say if a person who has done a tourism degree in at Sabaragamuwa University wants to join the HR section in the corporate, right? Definitely possible. Definitely possible, right? So because the undergraduate program gives you a all-round sort of a training at management level, right? Where you can operate as an executive from day one. That is the perception the industry has, right? So the industry will like to get someone in at executive level from a university, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So actually, we are running out of time. So in that sense, I would like to move towards the last question.
Yes,
So being a president in the Hoteliers Association in Nuwara Eliya, so can you explain what would be the role of the Hoteliers Association?
right. Now, all over Sri Lanka, each region has a hoteliers association, and what we do is uh, work for the common issues of the industry. We lobby with the government, with the local government, for certain services that we are supposed to get. For example, in our waste management, we need to work with the municipality or the Pradesh Sabha. So instead of one hotel going and making a representation, we collectively lobby for those things. And also we are affiliated to uh, the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, TASL, which is the apex body, which deals with the government in terms of lobbying for taxes, for for incentives and all of that. Um, Basically, the if you take the Nuwara Eliya Hotels Association or the Kandy Hotels Association, any regional association, one of the two things we are involved in is, one is training, right, where we get together and do training together, right? So the hotels in Nuwara Eliya, there are 11 member hotels. We get together and get an outside resource person to come and train our staff on wines or on some technical matter. That's one of the things we do every month. The other thing is, we look at ways of marketing the destination of Nuwara Eliya, how we can market it. by having food festivals, having certain, you know, activities like that. We have not done much, but during the year 2019, we had a food festival and a culinary competition. We had ice carving competition, things like that. That's the main role of a regional association. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tyrone, for sharing your valuable thoughts with us and for joining this discussion. I think all your wordings and all your knowledge might have been a value addition for our webinar. So thank you very much on behalf of the Department of Tourism Management of the Faculty of Management Studies of Sabaragamuwa University. I would like to say you a big thank from our end.
You
So
are most welcome.
yes. So and with that, I would like to thank all the participants who have joined with us for this webinar and raising all your questions and take all your questions into the discussion in this forum. So thank you very much. And at the same time, I would like to invite you all to stay tuned with us for upcoming webinars. Our next or the third webinar on the networking and business negotiations will be on 25th. That means the coming Monday, starting at the same time as today, 5 to 7 p.m. in the evening. So with that, until we meet up next time, I would like to wish you all to have a safe stay. So thank you very much and good night.
Good night.